Where are we going?
Into darkness.
Here we go again.
Clara, tell me, am I a good man?
I don't know.
I'm the Doctor, and I save people. Here. Now. This is where your story ends. What is happening? Same old, just the Doctor and Clara Oswald in the TARDIS. Something's coming, bro. I have the feeling that we're going to be fairly busy. It's time.
Doctor!
Bring it.
You're about to be exposed to the vacuum of space. This is the moment you've been waiting for since the day you were born.
Now, don't. Bill, with me to the TARDIS.
So sorry. I don't suppose either of you is a doctor.
You're trying to be funny.
Those police boxers, they're ever so good, aren't they?
We do have one little advantage.
What advantage?
There's two of us.
Is he here? Is the Doctor here?
Back to the Nerdy Grail, and welcome to the third video in this ranking every episode from Doctor Who series. I've been doing this for a while now because I've got 2 videos in this series already up on the channel, so if you want to check those out, I will put a link to them in the description below. But the first video I did was ranking every single 15th Doctor story from the Ncuti Gatwa era, from the Church on Ruby Road to the Reality War. Then in the second video I did, I ranked every single 13th Doctor story from the Jodie Whittaker era, from The Woman Who Fell to Earth all the way to The Power of the Doctor, because I'm going in reverse order for the Doctors. And as you can see behind me, I've got all my 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi Blu-ray box sets behind me, because in today's video, in the third video in this series, I'm going to be ranking every single 12th Doctor story played by Peter Capaldi, all the way from Deep Breath all the way down to Twice Upon a Time. Now, Peter Capaldi is my favourite Doctor from the modern era of the show, so you would probably think there'd be a little bit of a bias here, but no. Peter Capaldi is a bit of a mixed bag for me as well. He's got some absolutely amazing stories, and then he's got a couple of duds here and there, but we're going to get into that in today's video. So keep in mind this is going to be done in a tier list format, and this is merely my opinion, and your opinion and your list will probably look vastly different to mine, and that is okay. But let's waste no more time and jump straight into this ranking of every single 12th Doctor story. Okay, so here is the ranking every 12th Doctor story tier list. And as you can see, we've got all the episodes down the bottom here, from Deep Breath to Twice Upon a Time. And there's a lot of stories to get through, so we're going to jump straight into it. But I'm going to quickly show you the categories that we've got. So, top of the shop, so these are the fantastic, outstanding S-ranked stories. We've got Sometimes on a Good Day, If I Try Very Hard, I'm Not Some Old Time Lord Who Ran Away, I'm the Doctor. Then stories that are good stories. They're not top of the shop, but they are fairly good stories. We've got I Do What I Do Because It's Right, because it's decent, and above all, it's kind. I love that message from The Doctor Falls. It's brilliant. Love it. Then the stories that are just okay. We've got I'm Not Sure If Any of That Matters, Friends, Enemies, So Long As There's Mercy, Always Mercy. I like that. And that's just the okay stories. Then for stories that are they're not great. They're bad stories, but they're not terrible. We've got Sometimes the only choices you have are bad ones, but you still have to choose. And then finally, these are the stories that are really bad, in my opinion. We've got Pain is a Gift. Without the capacity for pain, we cannot feel the hurt we inflict. So there we go. So let's jump straight into this with his first story, Deep Breath. Now, I personally quite like Deep Breath. It was a longer story, introducing a new era to the show and a different tone to the show as well. Because obviously we had the Matt Smith era, which obviously will be the next video in this ranking list. But the Matt Smith era had a very different feel to the Capaldi era. For me, I think Deep Breath is a good start to show you what this Doctor's going to be like. It's a lot darker, and you can feel that with the characters, because they tried to give us the familiarity with characters like Vashta, Jenny and Strax, who work very differently with 12 than they do with 11. Clara's reaction to the man that she loved, pretty much. You get to see the pain that she's going through in the story and see how she's got to try and rebuild a relationship with the Doctor again. Then you've got the Doctor, who's pretty much on his own for most of the story. You know, he's unsure who he is, whether... You know, he's got this big question as whether he thinks he's a good man or not, and he doesn't know anymore. You know, it's really, really good. They bring back the clockwork droids from The Girl in the Fireplace to a degree, with references to Madame de Pompadour and all that sort of thing. So it was interesting, you know. So they had stuff for previous fans to latch on to, and I thought it was really nice that they included Matt Smith giving the 12th Doctor and Clara a phone call at the end, reassuring Clara that everything will be fine. You know, the Doctor's still me, I'm still there, but you need to help him out. And then introducing Missy at the end for the overarching plot thread of Series 8 and the Promised Land. So I like Deep Breath. I thought it was really good. The pacing at times can be a bit slow, but I think it needed it for this story. And, you know, it's a longer story anyway, so I thought it was a good one, to be honest. Then we got Into the Dalek. So the first time we've seen the Doctor shrink down and be shoved inside a Dalek, you know, and he gets to walk all around, and because there's a Dalek that's supposedly good, he calls it Rusty, and he wants to find out why the Dalek is turning against other Daleks, and is there such thing as a good Dalek? This story also introduces us to the character of Danny Pink, who ends up being a new little love interest for Clara. I'm always a bit hit or miss on Danny Pink. He was alright, don't get me wrong, but he never really connected well with me. He didn't show enough character development personally. But we'll get into that a little bit later in Series 8. But Into the Dalek, I also feel, like Deep Breath, was a good story, and I find it entertaining. You know, the concept of going inside a Dalek, you know, seeing what makes a Dalek tick. You get to see the Doctor be a little bit more darker in this as well. Peter Capaldi in Season 8 is very dark. He softens up as his era goes on, but I really like Into the Dalek, and I thought it was really, really good. And the, you know, all the wiring and the damaged look of Rusty was really, really good. And the side characters as well were, I wouldn't say they were likeable, but you sort of did like connect to each and every one of them, so I thought it was good. Robots of Sherwood, which is, you know, the Doctor meeting Robin Hood, and the Doctor doesn't believe that Robin Hood is a real thing, you know, but they end up meeting him. And also they've got this thing of whether he considers Robin Hood a hero or not, and that does that parallel with him as to whether the Doctor is actually a hero. You know, I thought it was all really, really good. I quite like Robots of Sherwood, so I'm also going to put it up here. I know it's so far you're probably thinking, oh, it's a bias of Peter Capaldi, but no, I genuinely enjoy these stories, and I think they are good. The fight scene at the start where the Doctor fights Robin Hood with a spoon, I think personally he does flip off the camera as well. If you freeze, you know, there's a scene during the fight scene where the Doctor's like moving his hand around, and if you freeze it at the right moment, it looks like he's flipping off the camera. Go back, watch the story, and you'll see what I mean, or Google an image on Google Images or something. But it's really good. I love the design of the robot. I love the look of, you know, the Sherwood Forest and the castle. I love all the side characters. You know, I love all the merry men. You know, I think it's really, really good. I like that the Doctor is sort of trying to impress Clara at the same time. There's a brilliant scene with the Doctor and Robin like arguing in a dungeon, and it is hilarious. I've not laughed so much in a long time. And pacing is pretty good. You know, it's just a fun little story in the past. It's quite good. I like it personally. I know some people don't, but this is just my personal opinion. However, Listen, the next story, for me, it drops a little bit here. Listen for me is just okay. I know some people quite like Listen. For me, there's bits that I like. I like the tense nature and the concept of there's something under your bed and you don't quite know what it is, and that scares you and scares people. But I just don't think they pull it off very well in the story. There's then also this thing where the Doctor and Clara bump into a future version of Danny Pink, or a descendant of Danny Pink, because he thinks there's a connection to Clara. But that never ends up coming back and actually gets contradicted later on in the series due to Danny Pink's demise later down the line. So this story becomes a little bit weird and irrelevant. They also try to say that Clara's the Doctor's monster under the bed, which gets him thinking about this scenario in the first place. This episode also introduces Clara, struggling with the lifestyle of being between the Doctor and Danny, because she hasn't told Danny about the Doctor but still wants to travel with the Doctor. So you get to see a funny montage at the start of this story on that, which I quite like. But yeah, and it was a bit of a slow burner for me. There wasn't really a proper monster. They did try to show a little monster when they go back to see Danny Pink as a child. You see like the monster under the bed for a brief moment, and that's about it. I wasn't huge on it. I wouldn't say it's a bad story. I think it's okay. It's passable. If you want to put it on in the background, it is what it is. And it's got good concepts anyway. Time Heist, again, I also think is just okay. It's nothing spectacular either. I thought the concept of the Doctor and Clara going on a bank heist, being bank robbers, having to infiltrate stuff, Mission Impossible style, I thought would be really, really good. They do it okay. You've got some interesting side characters who all have different skills and abilities. The plot twist that actually it was the Doctor all along who sent them on this mission in order to save a female, I can't remember if it was a male or a female of a certain species so that they could, reproduce and go on living because they'd been captured. I kind of saw coming to a degree, but, it kind of made sense for the 12th Doctor anyway. The look of the bank was okay. I don't know. It was an okay story overall. It was nothing special. The Caretaker I quite like. I think this is a good story for me, mainly because this is the story where Danny Pink finds out about the Doctor. And you get the banter and the interaction. The Doctor doesn't understand. You get to see the Doctor's alien nature come out a lot more in this story. He doesn't understand why Clara would like Danny. Danny doesn't understand why Clara likes and travels with the Doctor. You get major clashes in this episode. I also found it hilarious that one of the teachers in the school looks like Matt Smith, so looks like a previous Doctor, and the Doctor thinks that Clara fancies him and not Danny. Also, the Doctor cannot grasp the concept that Danny is a maths teacher instead of a PE teacher because Danny is a soldier. I love all the conflict that goes on here. I love going to Coal Hill, so it gives me classic Who vibes. I think it is really, really good, and I quite like it. It is a fun story, if I'm perfectly honest. I can see why people might not say it's a fantastic story and would put it lower on the list. I totally get that. But for me, it's just the enjoyment that I've had. Kill the Moon, I'm putting this down here in bad. Yeah, it's the first time now, yes. I told you there is going to be stories that's going to go in bad for Capaldi. I'm not biased. Peter Capaldi in Kill the Moon, I'm not a big fan of Kill the Moon. Firstly, I don't like Courtney Woods. I'm sorry, nothing against the actress, but Courtney Woods was an annoying character. I know she was kind of meant to be, but I'm not a huge fan of Courtney, so she really annoyed me in the story. I didn't really get... I know that obviously the core aspect of this story is, would you destroy the moon to save the Earth, life for life, that sort of thing. And the Doctor tried to take that burden from him and put it on Clara to let her actually, expand and make a decision for herself because he considers Earth's not his home. Is the big debate at the end of this, do you agree with Clara or the Doctor? Was the Doctor right to leave Clara and the rest of the gang? It's hard. I think Clara did overreact, but I do see where she came from. But I also understand where the Doctor came from, and that he can't be the one to always make the decision. Someone else should do that as well, because they do rely on the Doctor an awful lot. So I can see both sides of the argument, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan. And the moon being an egg, weird concept. They did like spiders as like the bacteria and stuff that's in the Earth, in the moon. It was a very mixed bag for me. But it's not as good as Listen and Time Heist. So Kill the Moon for me, nah, I'm not a big fan. Mummy on the Orient Express, I really like Mummy on the Orient Express. Thought that was good. I'm glad that they finally brought back a plot line from Matt Smith's era because the TARDIS phone went off in one of the early Matt Smith stories. I think it was The Big Bang at the end of season 5, saying that there was a mummy at loose on the Orient Express, and we finally got that. And the Doctor even mentions to Clara that they once tried to phone the TARDIS to get him to come down. At this point in the story, in the era and the show and the series, Clara and the Doctor have sort of gone their separate ways a little bit after the incident of Kill the Moon and the argument they had. So this is sort of like the Doctor and Clara call this their last hurrah in this story. So he takes her on the Orient Express for a nice little trip. You know, and it is. I love the design of the Orient Express, you know, and it travels through space. It's brilliant. Frank Skinner's character in this as well is fantastic, and he should have become a companion. He would have been brilliant. Loved it. The design of the mummy was good. I like that, you know, that he was an old soldier, which really made the Doctor stop and think. Yeah, it was really, really good and well paced. I like that the Doctor has jelly babies in like an old cigar box, a little bit of a reference then to like Tom Baker and all. I thought it was really, really good. I enjoy Mummy on Orient Express. I think it's a really good story. Flatline. Now, if you have seen my ranking modern Doctor Who stories, you know my opinions on Flatline, so you won't be surprised if you've seen it that I'm putting it straight away as the first story to go into the S tier, the top of the shop. I love Flatline. This does start the arc of Clara trying to be the Doctor, though, which I do find annoying. But at least there's a reason for it in this story, because something's affecting the TARDIS, causing it to shrink. It becomes like a toy TARDIS, and the Doctor's trapped inside, and so Clara has to investigate on the outside, because she's outside the TARDIS when it does that. And so she takes the lead and leads this little group of people who are, you know, on like community service and tries to save them and work out what's going on from these villains called the Boneless, who are like these two-dimensional creatures who live in like the walls and stuff, drag people down, convert them into graffiti art, or like there's an image of the internal organs and structure of the human body at one point. It's really, really good and really, really thoroughly entertaining, and I love the concept. Like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style. I love that. They did that in the classic series, but I quite like it more here. So yeah, I love Flatline, and I'd highly recommend it. In the Forest of the Night's going immediately down here. I don't like this story at all. In fact, when it comes to a rewatch of the series, I almost want to skip In the Forest of the Night. Great concept. Again, concept's great. You know, one day the world is just inhabited by trees, you know, everywhere, you know, and no one knows why. You can't burn them, you can't cut them down, you know. Why have they turned up there? And it's really, really good and really, really beautiful. The effects in this story are quite lackluster, especially there's a tiger that comes at some point and it looks really bad. The Doctor is conversation with the kids because it's a very kid-heavy story. It can be annoying at times. You know, and it's all because there's a big solar flare coming and the trees are there to protect the Earth, basically. You know, it's a story about environmental messaging and stuff like that. And there's very controversial topics in this story, but the pacing is off. Apart from it being visually stunning and the concept being pretty good, but then poorly executed, I can't watch this story. It's not a very good one in my opinion. The season finale, where we finally get to learn about the mysteries of Missy, and like I said earlier about Danny with Listen, Danny unfortunately doesn't make it in this story, so it makes Listen a bit pointless. I really like Dark Water. I think Dark Water was really good. It's going straight into the top of the shop. Part 1, this is now, because you get to see how Clara breaks and almost betrays the Doctor because of her love for Danny, showing that she cares more for Danny than the Doctor, which, you know, is interesting. And they do that in the Matt Smith era, where you find out, obviously, that Amy cares more for Rory than the Doctor in the end, which is good, and that's how it should be. But it's really, really good. Missy, played by Michelle Gomez, is fantastic. You know, they go to this institute. You see all these skeletons in tanks, you know, the preserved remains of loved ones. There's little hints throughout of wrongdoings. Clara's trying to rescue Danny and, you know, wants the Doctor to help, and the Doctor does agree. You see the return of Clara's grandma in this story randomly at the start, who has only made one appearance prior, and that was in Matt Smith's final story. Nice to see her again, but I don't really get why she was there. But at the end, we find out that actually it's the Master, or Missy, who turns out to be the Master in female form, has actually made the Institute and is converting the dead into Cybermen. And it's done in a very, very good way. We didn't expect it to be Cybermen, but there was little teasers throughout the story, and I think the reveal was good. And they even pay homage to the invasion at the end with the Cybermen coming out of St. Paul's Cathedral. Looks brilliant. They've tried to recreate it. I still think the classic series did it a bit better, but it was a nice recreation and a good little cliffhanger of, you know, Danny is in the afterlife, or the converting area, and he's about to delete his emotions and become a Cyberman. You know, the Cybermen are invading London. Missy has revealed herself as the Master, the Doctor. Who knows what's going on with Clara? It's big and grand, and I like that, and they do it in a great way. Death in Heaven then comes a bit more down here. I wouldn't say it's bad and I wouldn't say it's terrible, but part 2 definitely drags it down a bit because there's a long-winded scene in a graveyard at the end of the story, and I'm not a big fan of it. It's too long-winded. You know, they bring back Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, Osgood, which are great, and I love Kate. She does a fantastic job in this story, and Osgood is brilliant. They kill Osgood off, but obviously don't worry about that because that's not actually the case. Missy revealing herself to be the Master. You get to see all of that. But yeah, just the last 20 minutes are a drag of this story, where Clara is just standing in a graveyard talking to Danny. The Cybermen are awakening, but nothing's actually happening. You find out the whole plot is just Missy wants the Doctor to have an army because she wants her friend back. It seems very on brand for the Master, but also at the same time not. It's a very weird. I'm conflicted. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Death in Heaven, if I'm perfectly honest. It's okay, and I do like to watch it for the returns of Kate and Osgood, and the initial 20-25 minutes is pretty good. But yeah, but we do get to see a little tribute to the Brigadier at the end as well, who's apparently a Cyberman now. But very, very nice though. Then you got the Christmas special of Last Christmas. I thought that was just okay. Nothing special. You know, Doctor and Santa Claus, bit of banter. Yeah, and they sum up the Danny Pink story in the nutshell here, where, you know, Clara and Danny finally get their goodbyes. And Clara finally truly forgives the Doctor and truly wants to travel with the Doctor once again, you know, which is nice. I think Nick Frost does a good job as Santa, and there's some great banter between him and the Doctor. Good references to other horror franchises. They're definitely using Alien as a reference point. They even reference Alien in this as well, with the creatures looking like face huggers from Alien. And the Doctor says that's insulting as well. I thought that was quite a good line. But yeah, Last Christmas is just okay. Moving into Series 9. Now, I'm not a massive fan of Series 9. I do think it's my least favourite Capaldi season, but there's some good stuff here and there. I thought the first episode, the first two-parter episode, for me, was okay. I thought, you know, The Magician's Apprentice, it was an okay story. It is a bit random, especially if you didn't see any of the prequel stuff that came before it. There's just this giant snake creature that's after the Doctor, wants to know where he is because Davros is calling him back. Because we find out that there's extra history with the Doctor and Davros, where the Doctor abandoned Davros as a child, you know, left him almost for dead. So they added some extra history to Davros there, which is interesting. But it's all about them capturing the Doctor, taking him to Skaro so he can finally confront Davros, who has the Doctor's sonic screwdriver as well, which I also find is peculiar. But yeah, and Missy's in this story again as well. Dalek story, they go back to Skaro, a rebuilt version of Skaro. You get to see some classic series Daleks, which is nice, you know, good little references. And Davros as well, again played by the brilliant Julian Bleach, does a good job. You get some nice voice clips from previous Davros stories. You know, it felt very like we're playing hard to the fans here. And it was alright. Visually, the effects weren't great, especially when they first revealed the new Skaro, but it did feel a bit of a mess, this story, if I'm honest. And Missy's initial plan of freezing the planes in the sky to get Unit's attention, I wasn't a huge fan of that, if I'm honest. It was okay. And again, I also think part 2 is okay as well. I think they're about the same. They're about equal, if I'm honest. You know, Witches Familiar, Magician's Apprentice, then Witches Familiar. You know, but I do like Missy and Clara teaming up in this story to try and break back into Skaro to save the Doctor. They also pay homage to the first Dalek story in terms of Clara gets put inside a Dalek and they have to infiltrate Skaro. That is also a brief reference to Clara's first ever appearance in Oswin in Asylum of the Daleks, who was actually a Dalek. So they pay homage in some really interesting little ways here. But yeah, it was all right. But it was nice to have good conversations with the Doctor and Davros. You getting to see Davros, even though he was tricking the Doctor, you really did feel for Davros in the story. And seeing Davros open his eyes, that was very controversial at the time. I didn't mind it as much, but yeah, it was weird to see. But there was some great speeches, and that's what you can get and guarantee with the 12th Doctor's era. Fantastic speeches. Then you've got Under the Lake, which I quite like the first part of Under the Lake. I think the first part is creepy and really good. I like it. You know, this base under siege story where there's these ghosts that only come out at night or during night mode or night shift. I thought that was really, really interesting, picking them off one by one. The design of them's great. You know, you can see their mouths moving but no sounds coming out. They got these big blacked out eyes. It's really creepy, and it's all from this spaceship that landed in the middle of the base. Really good, and ends on a good cliffhanger of the Doctor becoming one of those ghosts as well. You also get to see in Series 9 that the Doctor's not very good at communicating his thoughts and feelings, and so there's these little cards that they use, which I thought was nice. And they didn't use that all through the series, they just used it here and there, but it was quite fun. And then the good use of a character who's deaf and uses sign language in this as well. I thought that was really, really nice. But it does get let down a bit then in the next story, which is Before the Flood, which upon rewatch I liked a little bit more, so I'm going to put it in okay. But it's not as good as part 1, to be honest. It's basically they go back in time to before the base and the town that they were in was underwater, and they find this, I think he's called the Fisher King. Brilliant looking design, really tall and menacing. But they don't do an awful lot with him. But yeah, it's just back to the past, try and solve it before it happens, so to speak, story. It was okay. Then we've got a Shielder 2-parter, where they introduced Maisie Williams to the show, the character of Me. The fit with Vikings, if I'm honest, I wasn't a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of it on rewatch. I didn't really get it. You know, it was all Vikings and Thor and stuff like that, and Odin, and, you know... Yeah, it was too silly and stupid. And the reasoning for the Doctor having the 12th Doctor's face is a nice one, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand really why they left it for a random story in the series and not, you know, in a bigger, impactful story. I know it was because, you know, that, you know, just to save someone, and he felt the need of, he needed to save a shield because he's tired of losing people. I get it, but I don't know. I wasn't huge of it. The setting was nice. It was definitely like reused from like Robots of Sherwood, but... Yeah, and then the second part, I've never liked the second part. I know some people might actually like the story. I've never liked The Woman Who Lived. I just don't like it. It's a very filler story for me. I'm not huge on it. The Ashilda 2-parter just never sticks with me, and I always kind of want to get through it and skip it. And the lion creature in it is just ridiculous to look at. I don't mind the Doctor and Ashilda's banter occasionally, but it gets a bit tiresome after a while. Then you've got the Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion. These stories are alright. I think personally, I'm going to do this quickly here now. I think the Zygon Invasion is okay. Great concept. You know, we get to see Osgood again. We know that there's 2 Osgoods. Obviously, this is the sequel to The Day of the Doctor, pretty much. So what happened post the 50th anniversary? What happened to the Zygons, you know? And what are they doing now? And it's all about like the human race against the Zygons, finding out who's a Zygon, can we trust them, do we need to get rid of them, that sort of thing. Who deserves to live, who deserves to continue existing. The first part's okay. The second part is, the reason I put the second part higher is because it's got the brilliant speech from the 12th Doctor talking to 2 versions of Clara, because they both want to wipe out the other. And the Doctor basically goes on a big rambling speech about, you know, how he's been in the Time War and how, you need to not do this because you'll be haunted by the visions forever. I love all that, and I thought that was fantastic. And the Doctor and Osgood have a great relationship in this 2-parter. So I quite like part 2. Part 1 is just okay. Sleep No More is going down here. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like Sleep No More. I've watched it twice, hated it both times. I'm doing a rewatch with my fiance, and we're on the Zygon 2-parter, so then we'll be coming on to this. She's never seen it. I've pre-warned her about it, in my personal opinion. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's not very... It's like a found footage style, and it has a payoff at the end which we never get to see. The characters in it are weird. I'm not a fan of it. The design of like the sand creatures or the sleepy creatures is alright, but I just don't like it. Face the Raven. See, now, I think Face the Raven is an excellent story, fantastic, and would be a brilliant departure for a companion if they stuck with it. But the problem, it gets ruined then later. But I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to leave it where it is. It is done brilliant. They get the return of Rigsy, who was in Flatline. who is really, really good in this. Love it. And Clara is on top form in the story. You know, absolutely amazing. And the Doctor, you can really feel for the Doctor and really feel that his anger for losing Clara. He goes really dark at the end of the story because he blames a Shielder, or me, who does return in this story, who's running this little trap street in the back corners of London, you know, to protect species that are hurt or injured or on the run. But yeah, she, you know, punishes people who do wrong using this Raven, which Clara does, unfortunately, face the Raven and has it's a beautiful final speech and a beautiful way to go for Clara anyway. And I love the hurt that the Doctor shows and the anger, almost like the War Doctor comes out in him again. But obviously it does get ruined later. And then the Doctor gets sent off somewhere where he gets trapped in the confession dial, let's be real. Which brings me on to Heaven Sent, Heaven Sent, let's be real, Heaven Sent is a beautiful, fantastic story. It is a solo story for Peter Capaldi alone. He just owns it. Peter Capaldi is able to could walk into a room with, you know, and just own it. You know, it's just him and this creature that doesn't speak for 45, 50 minutes, and he's just on top form. You know, the Doctor's trapped in the confession dial and he's trying to escape. And by the end, he does escape after billions of years of pain and torment and confessing all of the things he's done wrong and the mistakes he's made, and ends up back on Gallifrey at the end. So we get to see the return of Gallifrey, which I think is fantastic, and I absolutely love it. And everyone was hoping for the return of Gallifrey and to see what Stephen Moffat would do with it, which is where we get Hellbent. Which, for me, Hellbent, yeah. Hellbent, I'm not going to put it deadpan last, but it is going in the bad category. Hellbent is not a good story. And when you go from Heaven Sent to Hellbent, it is really, really not good. I'm not a fan of Hellbent. I don't like... They try to redo what happened with Donna, the forgetting the memories thing. It's not done very well. The Doctor also goes proper rogue and, like, hurts people, and I'm not a fan of it. And also it undoes Clara's death, which it was perfect and you didn't need to touch it. And then it's silly because Clara runs off at the end with a Shielder in her own TARDIS shaped like a diner. It's all weird. I don't like it at all. They ruined Clara for me personally there. Not very good at all. Husbands of River Song. This is going to surprise a lot of people where I'm going to put this. But I've never had as much fun in a Christmas special as I've had with Husbands of River Song. So for me, it's going in top of the shop, and that will probably really, really surprise people. But I love Husbands of River Song. I was debating putting it on my top 10 modern Doctor Who stories list. You know, I'm on reflection, I probably should have, but I love Husbands of River Song. Greg Davis as King Hydroflax is brilliant. It introduces Nardole with Matt Lucas. You've also got, obviously, the return and so far the last appearance on screen, anyway, of Alex Kingston as River Song. And her and the Doctor's relationship is fun. And I adore every second they're on screen together. And they finally come full circle with everything. Because at the end, they go to Darillium, spend like 24 odd years together. The Doctor gives River the screwdriver that we see in Silence of the Library. So you know what's coming next for her. It's beautiful and I love it. It is fantastic. I can't recommend Husbands of River Song enough. Return of Dr. Mysterio is okay. It's an okay story. It's nothing brilliant. You know, a weird concept to do superheroes. It's basically a rip-off of Superman because you've got, you know, the main character who's basically Clark Kent. You've got a Lois Lane thing. You've got the return of villains from the previous Christmas special. It's almost like they were supposed to be a two-parter. It's a fun story, but it's a weird one. And obviously the Doctor now travels with Nardole. So you got the Doctor and Nardole, and they're hilarious together. I do like it. It is an okay story. It's not a great story. It's okay. You know, I'm probably a bit more lenient on Return of Dr. Mysterio than some people would be, but I thought it was okay. Series 10, which anyone who knows me knows Series 10 is my favourite series, more or less, of modern Doctor Who. Between this and Season 1 of Christopher Eccleston, always like flip-flops for me. But I love Series 10. And the pilot, I thought was... it was okay, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say it was good, but it does introduce you to the characters and the themes of Series 10 quite well, you know. You get to know a lot about Bill, about Nardole, this secret vault that the Doctor's looking after while being a university professor. I think it is interesting, you know, and they run away from this water creature. The effects look really, really good. And yeah, I quite like it. It definitely sets the tone for Series 10 quite well. Same with Smile. I think Smile is also an okay story. Nothing spectacular. The emoji bots are a cool idea, and in, you know, modern technology, we do obviously text a lot and use emojis. You know, all about being happy. If you're not happy, then you're in trouble. This was definitely also a prototype for Orphan 55 in terms of the setting, definitely. But yeah, I love the emoji bots. They're so cute. Thin Ice, if I'm honest, on reflection, I'm not a fan of Thin Ice. I don't mind the Doctor and Bill hanging out. You get to go see the Frost Fears, which he hinted at that he did with River Song. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Thin Ice. It's not one that I go back and rewatch an awful lot, if I'm honest. Knock Knock, I'm putting that in good. I like Knock Knock. I like how the Doctor acts. Bill is moving into an apartment or a house, or wants to find accommodation nearby to campus with some of her mates, and they stumble across this old house, which I think was also used in Blink, and, you know, they end up getting trapped inside. But you get this nice, like, 20 minutes where the Doctor pretends to be, I think, her uncle or granddad, either granddad or uncle, and he tries to be cool, he tries to fit in, he listens to music. I love all that playful stuff, because especially with 12 being so alien, it's hilarious to see. But yeah, it is a fun story and a really interesting, peaceful, lovely story. I just have fun with it, and I think that's why I put it in good, is because I know I can enjoy it and have a laugh with it, and I think that's why I think I like Series 10 an awful lot, to be fair. Oxygen is going straight up here. This was another story that I was teetering on whether to put it on my top 10 modern Doctor Who stories list. Oxygen is dark. Oxygen is sinister. Oxygen is tense. Oxygen is brilliant, and starts a premise for the next couple of stories in Series 10, where the Doctor actually goes blind, sacrificing himself for Bill, his sight for Bill, and then you have a trilogy of stories then where the Doctor's blind, which I think is really, really interesting. Never been done before. But I really like it, and the zombie oxygen, is once you lose oxygen, because you have to pay for oxygen, once your oxygen level runs out, you either got to buy more or you just suffocate. And I think that is really, really interesting as a concept. And the creatures, once they've lost their oxygen, and their white out faces, and it's terrifying. They are proper zombies. And the suits that they wear control them as well to move them around. I think it's really good. Watch Oxygen. Extremis, or Extremis. I've never really been a huge fan of this one. That will probably annoy people, because I know a lot of people like this one. No, I'm not a huge fan. I do like the line that Bill says at the start, though, because she's on a date with someone, and then the Doctor sends the Pope in to go get her, and she says something along the lines of, "Do not send the Pope into my bedroom." You know, I think that's hilarious. But it's interesting also the Doctor trying to lie to Bill, being still blind, using sonic shades from Series 9 as a cover-up, for it. Because he can see, brief outlines if he uses the sonic shades, but he can't see anything properly. But yeah, it's a little bit of a confusing story. And he introduces the monks, which I love the monks. The monks are great. Adore the monks. Brilliant. The Pyramid at the End of the World, I definitely think is better. I actually quite like it, if I'm honest. And I like the dramatic end where the Doctor finally has to reveal that he's blind to Bill because he's trapped in a room and he can't see the numbers. He can only see the outline of the panel. And so Bill sacrifices their free will and gives in to the monks, who then create a fantasy wish world, a bit like what Series 2 has just done with Irani and Omega and Conrad, but this was done better, in order to give the Doctor his sight back, and I think it's really, really good. I love the effects, I love the location footage, and I just think it's really, really good, and the monks are really terrifying. Then you got The Lie of the Land, which for me is just okay. It's a bit of a step down. The Monk trilogy is such a mixed bag. There's a bad story, good story, okay story in there. You know, you finally get to see who's actually in the vault properly. I mean, you do get a hint slightly before in Extremis, which we find out in the vault is Missy, which everyone sort of predicted, that they thought that the Master would be in the vault. I even did, to be perfectly honest. So it wasn't really a shocker. But Missy obviously helps them out in this story, because Missy goes through a bit of an arc of trying to become a good guy, a good person again. And this is where it starts. They're defeated by love in this story, which is also a bit like what happens in Reality War. So Reality War and Wish Will definitely tried to be the Monk trilogy, just they did it worse. Empress of Mars, I love the Ice Warriors. You know I love an Ice Warrior story. For me, that goes into good, because I love the Ice Warriors in the story. And you get a female Ice Warrior, the Queen, which is really, really good. The design is great. And yes, on Mars, the Ice Warriors are from Mars. They are Martians. You need to do a story on Mars. It's really, really good, and I love it. And I thought it was beautiful that at the end of this story, we get a classic character return of Alpha Centauri, played again by the original actress, who's sadly no longer with us, but fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I'm really gutted we didn't get to see Alpha Centauri interact with the Doctor. I really wanted that. I think it would have been great with Capaldi, because if there's two Doctors that look quite similar, especially with their poofy hair at the end, it's Jon Pertwee and Peter Capaldi. So I thought that would have been really, really nice. But hey ho. But I love Empress of Mars. I thought it was really good. And I love the Ice Warriors. I think that's a little bit of a bias from me. Eaters of Light, I'm not a fan of that one. That one for me is going down into bad. It's not terrible, but it's a story a bit like in The Forest of the Night and stuff, where I probably would pass it on rewatch if I could. So I'm not a huge fan of Eaters of Light. It's not a great story for me. The next story is World Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls, which I'm going to put these two together because if you have seen, again, my modern ranking of Doctor Who stories, you know that I absolutely love World Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls. They are actually my second favourite modern Doctor Who two-part story. I think it is brilliant. The Mondasian Cybermen return. It's the only multi-master story we've got on the screen. Return of John Sim. I think it is done brilliantly. It's got some beautiful speeches, some brilliant effects, great concepts. The Master's actually disguised at the start of the story, and if it wasn't for the reveal in a trailer for the series, we wouldn't have known that it was John Sim, and we would have gotten a brilliant reveal. You know, I love it. And you get to see the genesis of the Cybermen, how the Cybermen came to be, finding out that actually it's the Master that partly influenced the Cybermen, which is, you know, are we surprised at this point, to be honest? Probably not, but I thought it was brilliant. And the Doctor basically gets killed at the start of Doctor Falls and is practically regenerating through the whole story, but he's holding it back. It is really, really good. And Bill gets converted into a Cyberman, and it is... oh, it's heart-wrenching, but it is also done brilliantly. And the departure of Nardole, this is where my favourite TARDIS team of Modern Who gets torn apart, and I'm sad for it. But I love it. You need to watch World Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls. And then we are finally at the end with Twice Upon a Time, and this starts a theme of finale stories for a Doctor, where from this one on, I would say every single final story of a Doctor incarnation is a multi-Doctor story to a degree. Twice Upon a Time for me, I think it's just okay. It's an okay Doctor departure story. It's shared with David Bradley, who plays the first Doctor, because obviously William Hartnell is not with us. And it is beautiful done. You know, the Doctor, you know, he doesn't really want to change. He's not sure he wants to keep going on. He doesn't see the point anymore. You know, there's some beautiful themes in it, but... at the same time as well, there's no real threat, and you kind of know what's going to happen by the end. So if I'm honest, you know, it is just okay. Like I said, it's beautiful moments. I like that the Doctor gets to interact with his first incarnation, and I thought the regeneration speech at the end, though be it a bit cringy, was really good. And I loved, you know, the destruction of the TARDIS, and then when Jodie pops up and falls out the TARDIS, I'm like, it is very dramatic. So I think it's okay. But that is the list of me ranking every single 12th Doctor story and episode. I know this has been a bit of a long one, but it was going to be because there's a lot more Peter Capaldi stories than there have been for Jodie and Ncuti. But I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below what are your favourite or least favourite Peter Capaldi stories. And subscribe if you are new. And next time we will be taking a deep dive into ranking every 11th Doctor story, so stay tuned for that. But this is the Nerdy Grail signing off for now. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.